Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's call for code. Sorry about that. Welcome to today's call for code honoring everyday heroes challenge session. My name is Jennifer. I'm with the call for code team, and we really want to welcome you here today. We have with us today John Wallachy from IBM and Eric Wong and Julia Wong from Samsung. And they're going to be talking today about using IBM Cloud and Watson AI services as you participate in this challenge. Before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping things to make you aware of. This session is being recorded. The replay will be available immediately after the event ends. Any resources we share today, we'll make sure we send those out, replay and the replay link as well in a follow-up email for those of you attending. But feel free to share the replay link with friends and colleagues. And finally, if you want to be notified of any future events, please follow IBM Developer on Crowdcast, and you'll be notified when we have other events like this. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to John to get us started. Thanks, John.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I am always so excited to be here with the Samsung team. And you know, I have some great demos always. And I've put together some really fun IBM Cloud, Watson AI, Node-RED. Of course, then I had to do interesting things with Samsung devices. So we're going to get to that too. But let's share my screen and pull that up. And now, why are you guys here? Because this is a call for code spot challenge. It's the Honoring Everyday Heroes challenge. Really excited that Samsung has announced that. So remember, we're on a several week journey because we launched the spot challenge 2 weeks ago on October 26th, and it's going to run until November 20th. Samsung is here with me, so I'm really delighted that Julia and Eric, they can wave in the background. We'll pull them in because we're going to talk about Watson AI and IBM Cloud. Oh, you guys got a pretty tough echo there. A little bit about me before we get started. I'm an IBM developer advocate. My expertise is in Edge and AI and IoT. I love to write tutorials and speak at conferences and now do live streams, but I actually really love to, create stuff. I'm a maker, and that's what I'm going to take you through today, because I learn through hands-on keyboard and I teach through example. Want you to learn along the way with me. And what we're going to cover today is this combination of how it can use technologies from Samsung, from IBM, to go help in the call for code context of Text for Good, apply our skills as developers to go help our everyday heroes. Throughout the pandemic, they were just, amazing. Look around your community and you can see them, the EMS and the medical professionals and the law enforcement, everyone who kept us safe, and everyone in retail and throughout our communities really did a fantastic job. And that's what the challenge is for us as developers. Can we build technology to help them and really showcase their contributions? So really great to have Samsung with me today. We are going to focus on how call for code can help. And we've got a whole set of Git repositories and resources available to you. One of them, if you jump over to call for code in the Git repository, we'll drop this link into the chat. If you haven't been here before, great place to start. I'll scroll down a little bit. You'll notice we've got our spot challenge for Samsung Heroes, and here we are. So one of the things I want you to do focus on, we do have a number of workshops coming up, right? We're on the second one. Today is November 4th, and we're going to talk about IBM Cloud and Watson AI, some of the examples that I've built and the catalog itself. And then come back next week. We've got the Samsung teams, Julia and Eric, are going to take the mic with some of their developers and talk about the Samsung SDKs and toolkits. I'm going to talk about Samsung toolkits today too, but the smart home and automation toolkits. But before we get to that, let's go focus on IBM Cloud. So if you've not yet create yourself an IBM Cloud user ID. And that's the first step. We've got a link down below. If Jennifer can drop that in, you can click on that link. You can register, and then you can get yourself a cloud account. It's free, and you can find your way over to the catalog. It's right in the masthead. So we're going to sort of start there. And there's a huge number of products in the catalog, both from partners and from IBM. You can, host everything from bare metal to infrastructure to, networking. And there's a lot of different ways that you can deploy to IBM Cloud, IBM Public Cloud, and all a variety of services and partners offerings that we've got on top of IBM Cloud. I'm going to focus particularly down in the AI and machine learning category, because I think if you're going to build a solution, you've got a whole variety. And let's scroll to the top because there's some big ones here. If you're planning to build a chatbot, Watson Assistant, fantastic solution. It's drag and drop. You basically build your conversation flows. We've made it really simple. This is like the third generation of Watson Assistant. We've really innovated around the whole conversation dialogue creation. We've made it easy for developers to, and you don't even have to be like write a lot of code. You just have to be able to write the conversation how you want that. So that's Watson Assistant. Underneath Watson Assistant is a whole set of AI around natural language processing and text analytics. Because if you don't know what the person typed, right, the intent and the entities and the context, you can't build a good chatbot. So underneath the Watson Assistant is a whole variety of language tools. And I'm going to do my example on natural language understanding in a minute. But before we get to NLU, I want you to make sure that you're aware of some of the other services that you could build with. If you're planning a data science project, you've got a whole bunch of data about everyday heroes and you want to use that, obviously with your Samsung device. Watson Studio is IBM's data science portal. You can start up a Jupyter Notebook, Spark, Python, R, all available in a Python notebook, sort of all in the cloud. You don't have to build the tool chains locally, and you can do some data science with Watson Studio. So do take advantage of that. Other cool things, if you're planning especially with everyday heroes, if you look around, there's, a lot of different communities in my neighborhood for sure. And depending on which language they happen to speak. So, there's opportunities to use language translation, Spanish and Korean and Chinese, and there's a whole variety of languages available in Watson for you to use the translation tools. Other things, speech to text and text to speech, really very powerful. So use language translation, use speech to text, get some text, now analyze the text with NLU or tone analyzer, and then maybe respond back to that user in their native language. So text to speech, not just English, but there are a lot of different Italian and German, a whole slack of those. All right, so take advantage of text to speech. And then we've got some TensorFlow and PyTorch, do take it from partners. But let's jump up to NLU, because that's the one that I find, especially from a text analytics perspective, the most powerful. And I've got that tab open here. So if you are planning to do any type of, take some language, like I said, from Watson Assistant, from the language translation tool, from speech to text, you bring it into NLU, you get back from NLU a whole variety of attributes. So entities, context, keywords, important topics, and you give it a body of text and it responds, with a whole set of attributes. Let's go take a look at that. There are some great, let's jump over to the About tab. And if you've not done this before, the service is hosted in IBM Cloud. It's an endpoint for you, so you don't have to think about where you're going to host this thing. We're already hosting it in a whole variety of data centers. It's available that you can go and just get an API key and start to use Watson NLU. Okay. So what is the URL that someone asked? So if you go and create yourself an instance of it, there's a whole variety of URLs here. So let's go dig in the API doc, and I do want to show you that's how you would use it. There's a whole set of endpoint URLs here. Let's go click on that. Hopefully it drops down for me. So depending on where you selected, API East, that happens to be in, say, Washington, D.C., and you could go and, start to hit this endpoint. You have to bring your API key, obviously, with you, and you get that from the catalog. You go create an instance of this, and then you paste your API key. We've got some examples. So not only do we make it easy to read the docs, but you can use the sidebar to go and experiment in, curls. Obviously, the easiest one, you just take your API key and the endpoint and you give it some text and it's going to respond back to you. If you're not depending on which language you're most comfortable in, we've got examples and toolkits for Java and Node and Python and Go and .NET. I think if I keep going here, there's Ruby and Swift and Unity. So there's a whole variety of different toolkits and languages that you can take advantage of this one. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully that answered your question in the chat about what URL. Now, once you've got the service and you get back a whole set of responses, what could you build with it? So one of the tools that we have available to us is Node-RED. I built a lot of examples with Node-RED. So I jumped over and I built myself. So where would I get text? So I have, if I want to just do a social media listening tool, I built myself a Twitter workshop chatbot, and I have over in Node-RED. Now this looks a little complicated. I'll walk you through it because it's a whole dashboard, and we could turn on and off the dashboard. Hopefully, I'm going to get some. Let's follow the flow. So if you've not used Node-RED before, you've got a palette, you've got a sidebar of debug, you have your flow in the middle, and a bunch of tabs. And I've been building lots of different Twitter tools here. So I've got one called Listen for a Twitter Feed, and I was going to follow Samsung. I turn on and off the flow, so I'm building a dashboard. And I'm going to do a little bit of rate limit because sometimes if you put in a hashtag that's very popular, you're going to get a lot of input. And I'm interested in the text of the tweets, not so much the URLs or the hashtags. So I'm going to strip them out. And I'm going to pass that to NLU. And I'm going to ask for the NLU emotion because I want to build a little chart. And I'm going to say, is this joy, anger, fear? So I want to get the natural language understanding tone analysis. And I'm going to put that into a chart. That's sort of what I'm going to do with this little section here. But we know that not everyone tweets in English. And so what happens is we might get a failure because we're going to try to do that NLU on an English, expecting English, and it's going to say, I don't know this. It's, in Spanish or German or one of the Indic languages in India. So I put a little catch here, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to identify which language is that person possibly speaking. And I'm going to then translate that German or Spanish or Italian or Hindu into English, so Hindu to English. And then I'm going to repass it through the NLU node. That's what this line here does. And I'm going to get the joy, fear, anger, disgust, sadness. And I'm going to put that in the chart. Okay, that's kind of cool. And sometimes you still can't translate it, so there's another catch down at the bottom. And I decided I wanted to write the data to a Cloudant database. So I write the data to a Cloudant database. And then I can analyze, over not just the singular tweets, but over the long term, I can actually get some feedback on, how do people like this particular topic or not. All right, so that's how the flow works. It's sort of my little social listener and supports lots of different languages. It uses Watson AI services, NLU. It uses language translation, language detection, Cloudant. I'm going to host this in IBM Cloud. This happens to be a Cloud Foundry app. In a couple of minutes, I'm going to show you Code Engine as well, some containerization work. Let's go see if this works, because when I turned it on, it wasn't working right. So we're going to put in a different hashtag. Let's go put in a hashtag. Let's just say IBM. Let's see what we get here. And so we should if this, hopefully there'll be some tweets about that. Anyone have a topic that we should follow that's not controversial? Julia, is there a topic that's hot today? Let's see if we get some tweets about it. Sometimes I get rate limited by Twitter. And that's, here we go. So what did we get? We got something. So down below, we're trying to build a table. We got an empty object here. Positive, negative.
It's tough, John, if it's not controversial.
It's not hot on Twitter, right?
It's the tough part.
Yeah.
How about whoa.
Type it, Eric.
Coming through. Let's go see what we got here. They're coming through with blank, though. Sometimes we have to just wait for it to come through. If this doesn't work, I'll move on to the next demo, because you never know what you're going to get. And so the idea is you have the tweet here, you have the scoreboard of here's the tweet, and then this sentiment, the longitudinal sentiment analysis from all the Cloudant data, and then the chart itself, and then a table. Of course, it's all blank because I have not seen any tweets come through. Let's go turn on a different one. There's the simplest one here. Let's go turn off the social listener one, and we'll go turn on just to see if we can get it to work. Maybe I got something else wrong with my flow. So I often will not limit myself by tweet dashboard. Last time I was following Alex for prison. That didn't work out too well for him, huh? Let's type Samson, see what we get for Samson. I gotta enable that little.
Eric had a good one, John, about the Eternals. It's controversial, but it's not serious controversial.
All right,
it's entertainment. But that might be a good one. Some bad ratings on Rotten Tomatoes.
Is there a hashtag for that? Let's see what we get first before we go too far.
Yeah. Sure.
No one's tweeting about Samson right now. Someone's got to be tweeting about Samson.
Yeah,
the fold. Awesome. Do you see what the prize? Let's talk about the prize, because you guys got to send me one. Last week, the other day, I was so excited about the prize. So not only do you win $15,000 after the December 9th, I think we're going to announce the winners of our challenge here, and you also, your teammates and you will get a Samsung Z Fold 3. And maybe you can slip one in for for John as well. Unfortunately, I can't be a winner. But yeah, that'd be very cool. So I'm going to do a demo with my just regular S21 in a couple of minutes. Looks like we're getting some data. Let's go look, see what we got here. All right. Yeah. So someone was tweeting, and that looks like Hindu. This one's about Bitcoins, because there's always Bitcoins out there. And you can see that the tweets go up and down, the sentiment, the score. So I can follow some of that. So that's kind of clever. Looks like it's working now. And this one was in Spanish. So I'm using NLU, and I'm using language translation, and so we're able to do some Twitter analysis, using the combination of IBM hosted service, the natural language translation, or actually natural language understanding, language translation, language detection. There you go. And that one happens to be, that's another language too, maybe. Very cool. All right, so that is some of the catalog. Let's go take a look at some of the other things that we have in the catalog that you might be interested in. Obviously, databases. So you want to build an application and store some data. Do take advantage of some databases. Cloud, is a great solution. Maybe you want to build a blockchain solution to support our everyday heroes. We've got some blockchain solutions there. I'm going to talk about some IoT solutions in a minute in another window. I'll set some of that up. And of course, if you're a developer and you're here listening to us, you might be interested in cloud native computing. And so I'm going to build a whole set of containers, and I'm going to deploy those containers to Code Engine, which is one of our services. Should we go do that next, guys? Let's go do that next. And so it's mostly positive. This is good news for Samsung here. I don't see any negative tweets. We're jumping between, neutral and positive. So good for that. All right, let's minimize that window, and let's set up some more discussion here. So those of you know that I'm a home automation person, and I have a whole variety of home automation gear, and I use smart things. Let's go pull up my phone here. And I'm just gonna, so you guys hopefully see that. I'll give you some context. So I'm going to turn on my phone and unlock it, hopefully. So that's 21. And I'm going to jump over to my tab of home automation stuff. And in particular, all right, I've got a lot of apps on my phone. I'm going to, in the center, you see Smart Things. So I'm going to click on Smart Things. Okay. And so I've got a whole variety of automations for my house. And in particular, so just to prove that I've got one that works. So this one sits behind my furnace. And if there was ever a furnace leak, there's a water sensor. So if I scroll down, let's show you this one. The basement water sensors here. So I'm just going to do this here. And hopefully you heard a beep, and there's a leak, right? So it sends me a text, sends me an alert, and I start to, because I want to go find out pretty quickly. So within a second, I know that there's something going on in my utility room. I can go and prevent the flood from really damaging something. So lots of little automations throughout the house. So that's sort of just utility room stuff. I have a more interesting one, and let's see if I can do this demo for you here. All right. So obviously it's normally plugged into the wall, Eric. So I have a lot of smart plugs throughout my house because I'm lazy, and I'm sitting on the couch. I want to turn on a light, or turn on the pumpkin on the front, the scary skeleton on the front porch. And so I've got a number of like front porch utility here, and I can turn on and off different. And you see in the middle it says basement office outlet. So I can toggle this one right here. Okay, and that's now obviously not. I need it to be in the frame of the camera, so that's why I've got it here on a power cord, and I have it to prove that I can turn something on and off. I have a fan, and you'll hear the fan, and maybe see blow my hair around. Haha. All right, let's do it. You heard the fan. You hear the fan, I think? You guys hear the fan? Yeah, cool. All right. All right, we'll put that in the back because we're going to actually build some interesting stuff around it. So now we know that just Samsung, smart things, all Zigbee to my hub to the cloud. Now that I've got that working, I wanted to go build an app, right? Because I'm a developer. Did I mention in my Twitter example, I'm an Uber nerd? Oh, here we go. So I jumped up to Samsung, and you guys got this automation studio, right? Really cool. And I started to play around, and I'm building webhooks, and I've got it tied to IFT, and I've got some other examples that I played around. So you could you'll notice that I had it's home and home, so I can build smart apps in the cloud and deploy them to my phone and then pull in devices and interesting things. So that's sort of what I did. And there's some Node-RED smart things webhooks, other cool developers out in the world have built with. And I started to play with a variety of devices. And that's what I did. And I went and I got myself a token so I could control it, not just in the app, but I could control it from other things like Node-RED. So I jumped up to the Node-RED catalog and I searched on smart things because Node-RED, sort of that you saw on the palette in the sidebar, I can extend it with all sorts of cool nodes. And there's one here called Node-RED Contrib Smart Things. I'm like, this is what I want. So I started to play with this one, and I started to build some automations. All right, now let's go make this a little bit bigger. All right, so when I build as a developer, I sort of start local, and I want to, so remember I've got not just plugs and water leaks, and I've got a lot of different thermostats in my house, sort of around the house, want to know if it's hot or cold. So I've got a thermostat. I'll show you one of those. I could, send alerts if my smoke detector, it's also a carbon dioxide detector. So I can kind of alert myself and my family if there's ever a fire. So I've got a whole set of, so I went over to the palette, and Smart Things has got all sorts of interesting capabilities and actions. And I started to build little examples here. And now, remember that office outlet's on the ground here? Let's go clear it. I can watch the power outage. So right now, that power in watts is 0. Let's go turn it on. So I'm just going to click on here. Did you hear the fan turn on? Blowing my hair crazy, right? And now let's go get the wattage. So I can now, it's going to tell me watts. I think it should. Oh, value. I'm asking for whether it's on or off. There's another feature where I can actually get how many watts that particular fan is pulling. Let's go turn it off. All right, so now I can remotely turn on and off, at least from my laptop, I could control the switch. And in fact, it's going from my laptop to the cloud, to Smart Things, automation, down to my hub, Zigbee to the actual plug. So pretty long journey there, pretty amazing. All right, so now I've got it sort of just on my laptop, and you'll notice that's localhost. And I want to do something interesting with this because I want to deploy this app in the cloud. And so my next step, let's do 2 more demos because one thing, I'll walk you through all the tabs here. I wanted to make sure that if any of my devices run out of power, because remember they're all like little tiny things. They sit in the basement in the corner. One sits behind the washing machine. One sits behind the furnace. I've got a temperature one out on the front porch, so I know it's hot and cold outside. So I wanted to go query the battery life, so I can go and query battery. And then if the battery is low, it would text me a message. And so I can get the status of the power, and I would get a text. Of course, I changed the battery the other day on the front porch, so 100%. 78 for the one over here. So it would send me a text, and it does work. If I just get a text. So that's the battery one. Let's go take a look at the temperature one, because I want to know what the temperature is. And I have thermostats throughout the house. So I got a few of those, and I built a little table. Let's go take a look at that table, because there's automations to this. And so it's not very interesting. It's just a little table. So hopefully it works. There we go. So looks like, so here's the various temperatures. Colder outside, obviously. The warmest up near the ceiling, and then colder behind the base, behind the washing machine. It's a utility room, right? Front porch, sort of the coldest spot. And I built a little chart. So that's sort of what you see in the chart there. All right, so now it all runs local. And I'm like, okay, I'm still not using IBM Cloud in my little examples. So let's build a container. And that's the next little game I played here. So I'm going to stop Node-RED local. So Node-RED's, Control C. And, that's running. I could run it local. But instead, I wanted to build a container. And I did a couple of things. Let's go grab this over here. So as a developer, I've got myself a package JSON. And it's Node-RED Smart Things integration, and I've going to use Node-RED and a dashboard, and maybe I want to put things on a map, and I've got the automation tools from Samsung, Smart Things and Twilio, so I can send myself a text if I need it, and a table, and I've got a flow with some credentials. All right, so that's kind of fun. Then I've got a Docker file. Now, I'm building, pretty sophisticated Docker files lately, because I want to make sure that it's secure software bill of materials. So I've got a multi-stage Docker file that I use trusted images. I use UBI trusted images, so universal base image. I happen to use a Red Hat 8.4, and I install some stuff. And then I install my npm packages. I copy the package JSON into the intermediate builder container. I do an npm install. I copy in some Node-RED stuff, copy in the Node-RED flow. And then I copy in, since I don't want to use the big one, this is a rather big image, but I used it to do builds and makes and so forth, GCC. I don't need all of that stuff in my container at the end. So I want instead to use Node.js minimal, so sort of the smaller image. And I'm just going to copy in a few things. So I'm going to set it up for Node-RED, and I'm going to copy from the intermediate container everything that I built up above into the primary one. And so let's go do that. I could type make build, but it takes a couple of minutes, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do a make run. And so that started the container in the background. So now if I do I'm a Podman person, but you can do Podman PS, and you see that I'm now running localhost, Wallachie, Node-RED, Smart Things 101. And let's go do a make test. Now, it's not running. Yes, it's still running local, but it's running local inside the container. And I'm going to start up that flow, and there it is. So let's go prove that it works in the container, right? Just you hear the fan turn on. I should do a little light. Turn that off. Okay, so now we know our Smart Thing stuff works inside the container. Still not using IBM Cloud. Show me IBM Cloud, John. All right, so my next step was I want to deploy this container to IBM Cloud Code Engine. So I jumped up to Code Engine. So it's one of the services in our catalog. I'll navigate you there again. So if you go from the little masthead, there's a Code Engine overview, takes you to here. And so what this allows you to do is you build a container and then you upload the container to somewhere, so Docker Hub, or maybe a private registry service. So I happen to use the IBM Container Registry Service because it's private to IBM Cloud, and I can protect it. And I've got credentials in my container. I do lots of secret things with secrets, but if I want to just protect it, I'm going to put it somewhere not Docker Hub. And with the change to Docker licensing, I've moved almost all my work to Podman and to IBM Container Registry Service, and I don't need Docker or Docker Hub necessarily because I'm just using OCI images instead. So I jumped over and I'm reading about containers, and this is kind of cool. So I've got a couple of namespaces here. Let's just dive into that. I think I've got one called Samsung Edge. So I've been building some things with Samsung Edge. So here's the one I just built 2 hours ago, doing some other things with IBM Edge Application Manager. That's one of these others. And so you can see I've got an image I've uploaded. I did a make push, and I pushed it to, well, I could prove that to you. So if I do a clear, and then I do a make registry, this just does an IBM Cloud CR. There it is, IBM CR images, and I'm just going to grep on the Node-RED smart things. And sure enough, I built two of them. The first one, and then I've got a new one. That was neat. So then I wanted to deploy it to Code Engine. Remember, let's go back to Code Engine. And so I jumped over to projects. And I've got a whole bunch of projects here. So let's go dive into the IBM, what I call it, Wallachy Code Engine. And I've got 4 apps available there. Let's go see what they are. I did a bunch of stuff with Weather Company. So if you come back next week, I'm doing some Weather Company APIs. I've got some examples, which I'll show you running weather maps and so forth, truck routing. But here we got this new one. And you'll notice that Code Engine allows me to scale an app because it's serverless. And I can scale that app from all the way to 0. So when there's no load, it shuts itself down and there's no cost to it. And when I hit the endpoint, it scales up. So cold start, and then it runs. And then if it needs to scale more, it'll start multiple containers, and I can, obviously elastic load of that. And I can decide how much CPU and how much memory I allocate to this particular container. And I did that all in my make file, which I didn't want to go and spend too much time inside make files. But I can CLI. There's GUIs for all of these things, guys, but I'm a CLI person. And so I did a IBM Cloud Code Engine. That's what a little shorthand for CE is. An app update, IBM, what do I call it? Node-RED, smart things, the image over an ICR, IBM Container Registry, image name version, the port that it needs to run. I want it to scale to 1. I didn't want it to scale multiple because why spend all that money? Or, it's relatively cheap. I'll show you the pricing in a second. And we were really only running Node-RED. So I just said to myself, I don't really need a full CPU. So just give me a quarter of a CPU and some memory, a little bit of memory. And sure enough, that's exactly what gets created there. Let's go back to overview in apps. Now, when you do create, you can do all of what I just showed you from the CLI. You can hit the create button and, give it a name. You could, if you've got your containers already available in Docker Hub, you don't need IBM Container Registry Service. You can just totally type in Docker Hub right here. The ports whether you want it to be a public endpoint or private endpoint, set your own environment variables and configs and secrets, right? Runtime settings, go jump into runtime settings. Whether you want it to scale, how big you want it to scale, how many CPUs, right? That's a, pretty substantial. You can scale it pretty big if you need it to be scaled that big. There's some pricing here. So, that's like fractions and fractions of a penny. And I think you get 100,000 per month free. So sort of go crazy if you want to. But, it's the cloud. And sure, it's infinite, but there's a price to it. Be careful there. And so I keep mine pretty small just for demos. And so it's pretty simple. So that's how, if I were to go create one with the GUI, I fill in all the fields. I did it from the CLI instead. And so now let's go dive into this one. And so there it is. It tells me that it's been running for about an hour. And so I got a cute little graph. And you can see that it spun up and spins down, and I can go delete them. This one happens to be the latest. So I got all sorts of metrics about my container. Let's go over here to test. And if I hit the test button, now you notice the URL is different. All right, so now I'm actually running an IBM public cloud in, K native serverless. I'm running my container, something app domain cloud. And there's that flow that I had built. And now I've got all the credentials for it. Let's go turn on the fan. Now, in that case, let's turn it off. It's really that simple. So what happened this time? So it went from IBM Cloud Code Engine to Smart Things down to my hub, from my hub to my Zigbee power switch here, and it turned on the fan, all within like fractions of a second. And so that was sort of the power of IBM Cloud and Code Engine, with a container. Interesting thing with Smart Things and Samsung devices. So I was sort of like, how do I bring it together? How do I, make it interesting for? I see that Julia's shaking her head like, wow, John's a nerd. And you can build stuff like this. It's really not that hard with IBM Cloud and with some cool Smart Things capabilities. Where's my automation stuff? So I built with the Automation Studio. It's Diwali's coming up. That is right. Thanks for that. Vivek mentioned. So should we go back? So that was the two examples that I wanted to show. The first example was some Watson AI. The second example was Code Engine. I do have, now I didn't ever post my Smart Things example in GitHub, but if you're interested, I do have one example that uses Code Engine, and I'm going to talk about it next week. It's the radar map one. If you jump into the radar map makefile, I'm just going to go into the makefile there and scroll towards the bottom. I thought I posted my Code Engine stuff. If not, I'll post it before next week. Sorry. I do have it someplace. I have some Code Engine examples. It's all the CLI that I showed you there. Okay. All right, let's take Julia. What did you think of that? Eric, what do you guys think? Was that fun or what?
It was pretty easy, John.
It's all Node-RED and drag and drop. And, an API here or there, and then a whole bunch of magic CLI commands.
Yeah, that's great.
Let's go back. Where is? I gotta go.
Yeah, it's good how you're able to kind of pull everything together.
Let's go find. Where did my? I lost the window. I was gonna go back to the dashboard. Let's see if I can find my dashboard here. I wanted to see if we've got. There it is. We had a few more tweets coming in, and that was pretty positive. Let's go back to the scoreboard. That was the one that was on. You guys are rocking it. And there's no negative Samsung tweets out there today. So that's kind of good. Did we want to drop in one more? The Eternals? Was that the secret link that I should be chasing now? Hashtag Eternals?
Or Dune. Yeah, I saw Dune over the weekend. It was awesome.
Oh,
I'm
man.
not sure how many other people saw it. It was amazing. What a spectacle. That'll be all positive, I'm sure. Eternals will be up and down.
Let's go see. Let's go see what's. Someone liked the Z Fold 3 there. All right, so let's turn back to the catalog, because the catalog, we're going to wrap up here. And I'm going to remind folks of some extra resources. So just encourage you to build. If you're going to build for your Everyday Heroes solution, one service in IBM. So it could be any of the IBM service catalogs. The AI is certainly easy. You can host your app in IBM Cloud. I showed you the Code Engine, pretty simple way to build your app in Code Engine. And then if you're doing any text analytics, NLU is very powerful. Tone analysis, Watson speech to text, text to speech, language translation, all very powerful to build with as well. Okay. And then let's jump over to the Call for Code service, because I want to remind everyone that we're back for the next couple of weeks. We've got some workshops coming up. So next week on the 9th, we've got that's Tuesday. Julia, do you want to like pre-announce that you've got a team coming with you, right?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. So I hope a lot of you can join us. We'll be going over how to register to access our awesome Samsung dev tools, such as the Samsung Knox SDK. And there's this awesome project that Eric and I have been working on for last year in beta, the Samsung Toolkit. So we're going to bring some technical experts and run through some stuff with you, some examples, show you some sample apps, and see if you guys are interested in using it in your solution.
Yeah, very cool. I'm looking forward to that one, because I've built, like you see, I build all sorts of automation. So if I could build a secure, something I can secure my Knox apps, that'd be awesome, fun. And then I'm back next Thursday, so a week from now, to talk about the Weather Company and the Weather Company APIs, and we'll kind of dig in. So anything that maybe you want to support your hometown heroes, and it's weather related, I've got a bunch of APIs for that. Lightning strikes and forecast data and historical data. So fun to come and join me next week. And then we want to make sure that you submit your project. So we've got some office hours and then some help to assist folks get their project submitted sort of at the end. So the 16th and the 18th of November. Do you remember that there are some really cool set of prizes here? So 15K, some Z Fold 3s, and then if you're the winner, support from both of us to help you deploy it and really help those heroes that you built your solution for. Okay, make sure you get your submission in by the 20th. That's the deadline. And then tune back in on the 9th to hear who the winners are. Any other things that we should sort of talk about? All right. If not, we are going to sign out here.